My mother has called me the man of her dreams since I was 12 and makes me sleep in her room every night. When I brought home a girlfriend, she wore lingerie to meet her, then threatened to kill herself if I ever left. After I tried to escape, she stalked me for months and destroyed my job, my apartment, and every relationship until I had no choice but to come back home. My mother has been single since I was 12 years old. That's also when she started calling me the man of her dreams. I thought it was normal at first. I thought every divorced mom relied on her son the way mine relied on me. By the time I turned 26, I had never had a real girlfriend. Sure, I tried dating in high school and college, but every attempt ended the same way. My mom would have one of her panic attacks. She'd call me crying in the middle of my dates. She'd beg me to come home because she couldn't breathe without me there. I always went home, every single time. "You're all I have," she would whisper while gripping my hand in her bed. "Promise you'll never leave me like your father did." I never realized how wrong it all was, not until I met Jessica at my cousin's wedding last month. Jessica was a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. When she heard about my living situation, her face changed. "You still live with your mom?" she asked gently. "Yeah, she needs me," I explained. "She has really bad anxiety. I sleep on the couch in her room most nights. It helps her feel safe." Jessica's eyebrows went up, but she didn't say anything judgmental. Instead, she asked if we could have coffee sometime. I said yes before I could stop myself. Our coffee date was the first time I'd felt normal in years. Jessica listened without making me feel crazy. She laughed at my jokes. She didn't once mention my mother until I brought her up. "I should probably head home soon," I said after 2 hours. "Mom gets worried when I'm gone too long. Can I meet her sometime?" Jessica asked. I'd love to put a face to all these stories. My stomach dropped, but I couldn't think of a good reason to say no. The next Saturday, I brought Jessica home. I'd warned my mom that morning, and she'd seemed oddly calm about it. She even said she was excited to meet this girl you won't stop talking about. I should have known something was wrong. When we walked in, my mom was wearing a silk nightgown at 3 in the afternoon. She'd done her makeup and hair like she was going on a date herself. "So you're Jessica," she said, looking her up and down. "I'm Sharon, but I'm sure my baby has told you everything about me. We don't have any secrets, do we, honey?" She ran her hand through my hair as she said it. I stepped away, my face burning. "Mom, why don't we all sit in the living room?" "Oh, I thought we'd be more comfortable in my bedroom," she said. "That's where we usually hang out. He likes to give me foot massages while we watch our shows." Jessica's professional mask slipped for just a second. I saw the concern flash across her face. "The living room is fine," Jessica said firmly. My mom's jaw tightened. "I suppose, though I don't know why we need to be so formal. We're very casual in this house, very close. Sometimes I forget where I end and he begins." We sat down, and it only got worse from there. My mom kept touching me. She'd rest her hand on my thigh, play with my hair. At one point, she even tried to sit on the arm of my chair before I stood up. "Tell her about our trip to Vegas," my mom said, "when we shared that honeymoon suite because they messed up our reservation. It was just cheaper than getting 2 rooms," I muttered. "We had such a romantic time," she continued. "Couples massages, fancy dinners. Everyone thought we were together, didn't they, baby?" Jessica cleared her throat. "How long have you two lived together?" "He's never left," my mom said proudly. "Other boys abandon their mothers, but not mine. He knows I'd die without him. Literally die. My heart couldn't take it." "Mom, stop being so dramatic." But she wasn't done. She brought out photo albums from our Vegas trip. Every picture made my stomach turn. There we were in matching robes. There was her hand on my chest by the pool. A photo of us in bed that she'd asked a stranger to take. Jessica's expression grew more disturbed with each page. Through her eyes, I finally saw how sick it all looked. My mom must have noticed Jessica's reaction because suddenly she clutched her chest. Her breathing became ragged and tears started flowing. The panic attack was instant and violent. She collapsed against me, her silk nightgown sliding off one shoulder as she sobbed. Her whole body convulsed as she pressed her face into my neck. Her arms wrapped around me like a drowning person. This was her signature move. This always worked. Except now Jessica was watching, and I could see the calculation behind it. The way her breathing was actually steady between sobs. The deliberate way she positioned herself. Jessica stood up quietly and mouthed, "Call me," before heading to the door. The second it clicked shut, my mom's hysteria intensified. But then, just as suddenly, she went still. "Good," she whispered in my ear. "She's gone. No one will ever love you like I do. You're mine. You've always been mine." Something inside me shattered. I tried to pull away, but her nails dug into my back. "If you leave me, I'll end myself," she said, her voice eerily calm. "You know I will. I have pills saved. I have a plan. Your father's betrayal nearly culled me. Yours would finish the job." I froze completely. She'd threatened before, but never with such specific details. Never with such cold certainty. That night changed everything between us. The silence that followed felt like a physical weight pressing down on me. My mother's arms were still wrapped around me, her breath hot against my neck. I could feel her heartbeat, steady and calculated. Nothing like the frantic rhythm she'd been faking moments before. I finally found the strength to push her away. She stumbled back, her silk nightgown catching on the coffee table. Her face transformed instantly from triumphant to wounded. "How could you?" she gasped, clutching at her chest again. But this time I saw through it. I saw the way her eyes tracked my movements, gauging my reaction. I saw how her breathing remained perfectly controlled, even as she pretended to hyperventilate. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. She followed, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor. When I reached for the doorknob, she threw herself against the door, spreading her arms wide to block my exit. "You can't leave," she screamed. "I'll do it. I'll take all the pills right now." I stopped, my hand frozen on the doorknob. She saw my hesitation and pressed her advantage. She ran to the kitchen, yanking open the cabinet where she kept her medications. Bottles rattled as she swept them onto the counter. "See?" She held up a bottle of sleeping pills, shaking it like a maraca. 30 pills. That's all it would take. Your choice, baby. Stay with me or have my blood on your hands forever. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. My mother's eyes narrowed when she saw it. "Don't you dare answer that," she hissed. "That woman is trying to steal you from me. She doesn't understand our bond. No one does." I let the call go to voicemail. My mother smiled, victorious again. She set the med bottle down and glided toward me, her nightgown flowing behind her like a wedding dress. "That's my good boy," she cooed, reaching up to stroke my face. "Now come to bed. You can sleep next to me tonight. I need you close after all this stress." I let her lead me to her bedroom, my feet moving on autopilot. She'd redecorated recently, I noticed. New silk sheets, candles on the nightstand, a framed photo of us from Vegas on her dresser, the one where we looked like a couple on their honeymoon. She climbed into bed and patted the space beside her. I sat on the edge, still wearing my jacket. She frowned and tugged at the zipper. "Take that off. You know I hate when you wear outside clothes in bed." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Jessica. "I'm here if you need to talk. What I saw today wasn't normal or healthy. You deserve better." My mother snatched the phone from my hand before I could respond. She read the message, her face darkening with each word. "How dare she?" she spat. "Trying to diagnose us after one visit. She doesn't know anything about our relationship, about what we've been through together." She deleted Jessica's contact contact information while I watched, frozen. Then she went through my other contacts, deleting every female name she found. There, she said, handing the phone back. Now you won't be tempted by these vultures trying to tear us apart. That night, I lay awake on the couch in her room, listening to her breathing. Every time I shifted, she would stir and reach out to make sure I was still there. Her hand would find mine in the darkness, squeezing tight enough to hurt. Don't ever scare me like that again, she whispered at one point. You're all I have left. Without you, I'm nothing. The next morning, she was in the kitchen making breakfast when I woke up. She'd changed into a sundress that looked more appropriate for a date than a Sunday morning at home. Her makeup was already perfect at 7 a.m. I made your favorite, she sang out. Chocolate chip pancakes, just like when you were little. Remember how you used to say I made them better than anyone else's mom? I sat down at the table, noticing she'd only set 2 places. The plates were the good china we never used. She'd even lit candles. Mom, it's breakfast. Why are there candles? Can't I make things special for my baby? She set a plate in front of me, then surprised me by sitting in my lap instead of her own chair. Besides, we need to celebrate. Celebrate what? That awful woman is gone. It's just us again, the way it should be. She fed me a bite of pancake, her fingers lingering on my lips. Open up for mommy. I turned my head away. I can feed myself. Her face fell. She slid off my lap and into her own chair, tears already forming in her eyes. You've changed since you met her, she said. You used to love when I took care of you. Well, nothing says meet the parents quite like mom showing up in a silk nightgown at 3 in the afternoon with a photo album of your Vegas honeymoon suite vacation together. That's definitely not in any dating handbook I've ever seen. Remember when you were sick last year? You let me feed you soup in bed. You said I was the best nurse in the world. I had the flu. I could barely sit up, but you needed me then. You still need me now. You just don't realize it. She reached across the table to take my hand. What if you get sick again? What if you have an accident? Who else would drop everything to care for you? My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered it before she could stop me. Hi, it's Jessica. I got your number from your cousin. I wanted to check on you. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. She stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. How is this possible? She shrieked. I deleted her. I stood up too, moving toward the living room. My mother followed, trying to grab the phone. I held it above my head like we were children fighting over a toy. I'm okay, I told Jessica, though my voice shook. Things are complicated right now. Do you want to meet somewhere? Jessica asked. Just to talk. As a friend, nothing more. My mother must have heard because she suddenly clutched her stomach and doubled over. She let out a wail of pain that sounded almost inhuman. My pills! She gasped. I took them. I took all of them while you were sleeping. If you leave now, I'll die. My blood went cold. I dropped the phone and grabbed her shoulders. What did you take? How many? She collapsed against me, her body going limp. I had to hold her up to keep her from hitting the floor. All of them, she moaned. The sleeping pills. Maybe 20, maybe 30. I can't remember. Everything's getting fuzzy. I could hear Jessica's voice from the dropped phone, asking what was happening. I needed to call 911, but my mother's grip on my shirt was iron tight. Don't call anyone, she whispered. Just hold me. Let me die in your arms. It's what I want, to be with you at the end. My hands shook as I tried to pry her fingers loose. She was definitely acting strange, but was it from pills or performance? Her pupils looked normal. Her pulse felt steady under my fingers. Mom, if you really took pills, we need to get you to a hospital. No hospitals. Promise me. Just stay with me. Tell me you love me. Tell me I'm the only woman you'll ever need. I managed to reach my phone with my foot, dragging it closer. Jessica was still on the line. Call 911, I said loudly. My mom says she overdosed on sleeping pills. My mother's eyes flew open, suddenly clear and focused. Don't you dare, she snarled, all pretense of weakness gone. I didn't take anything, but I will if you don't hang up right now. I'll do it right in front of you. The admission hit me like a physical blow. She'd been lying. Again. Always lying. Always manipulating. Always finding new ways to keep me trapped. Jessica, I'll call you back, I said. Wait, Jessica's voice was urgent. This is abuse. What she's doing is emotional abuse. You don't have to stay there. You have options. My mother heard every word. Her face went white, then red, then purple with rage. Abuse? She shrieked. I gave up my life for him. I sacrificed everything. I could have remarried, but I chose him. I chose to be alone so he wouldn't have to share me with anyone. She ran to the kitchen and came back with a knife. My heart stopped, but instead of threatening me, she held it to her own wrist. Is this what you want? She screamed. To find me bleeding out because some therapist filled your head with lies? I'll do it. I'll die knowing my own son betrayed me. I stood frozen, watching the knife blade press against her pale wrist. My mind raced through calculations. She'd done this before with scissors, with razors, with broken glass. Each time stopping just short of real damage. Each time waiting for me to rush forward and wrestle the weapon away. This time I stepped backward instead. Her eyes widened in shock. The knife wavered against her skin. I took another step back, then another, until I reached the kitchen doorway. My mother's face crumpled as she realized I wasn't playing my assigned role in her performance. The knife clattered to the floor. She dropped to her knees, crawling toward me with her nightgown tangling around her legs. Her fingers clawed at the linoleum as she moved, leaving scratch marks in the wax finish. I turned and walked to my room. Behind me, her wails escalated into something primal. Glass shattered in the kitchen. Drawers slammed. The sound of pills scattering across the floor made my steps falter, but I forced myself to keep moving. In my room, I grabbed the duffel bag from under my bed and started throwing clothes inside. My hands moved mechanically, folding shirts and rolling socks while my mother's theatrics continued in the background. The familiar sounds of her meltdowns had become white noise over the years. Now they felt different, desperate, final. She appeared in my doorway, mascara streaming down her face in black rivers. Her nightgown hung off one shoulder, and her hair stuck out at wild angles. She'd scratched her own arms, leaving red welts that would bruise by tomorrow. I zipped the bag closed and tried to move past her. She blocked the doorway with her body, spreading her arms and legs like a starfish. I waited. She couldn't hold that position forever. Her arms began to tremble, then her legs. Finally, she collapsed against the doorframe, sliding down until she sat crumpled on the floor. I stepped over her carefully, making sure not to touch her as I passed. The front door seemed miles away. Each step felt like walking through quicksand. My mother crawled behind me, her nails clicking against the hardwood like an animal's claws. When I reached for my car keys on the hook by the door, she lunged forward and grabbed my ankle. I looked down at her, really looked at her for the first time in years. The careful makeup couldn't hide the calculating gleam in her eyes. The tears might be real, but the timing was performance. Everything about her was designed to trap me, to guilt me, to keep me frozen in place as her emotional support animal. I shook my leg free and opened the door. Sunlight flooded the entryway, making her flinch back like a vampire. The normal world existed right there, just beyond our threshold. Other people were living normal lives, having normal relationships, making normal choices that didn't involve being held hostage by their mother's manufactured crises. My phone buzzed. Jessica had sent her address, just 10 minutes away. 10 minutes between me and something resembling sanity. My mother must have sensed my resolve weakening because she changed tactics. She stopped crying, stopped clawing. Instead, she sat back on her her heels and smoothed her nightgown with trembling hands. When she looked up at me, her face had transformed into something soft and vulnerable. She started talking about my childhood, about the time I broke my arm falling off my bike, and she stayed up all night making sure I was comfortable, about the science fair project we built together that won second place, about the songs she used to sing when I had nightmares, real memories, real moments when she'd been a mother instead of whatever she'd become. The manipulation was more sophisticated now, more subtle. She wasn't threatening or crying or throwing things. She was reminding me of the good times, the normal times, the times before everything went wrong. I almost put the bag down, almost closed the door, almost fell back into the familiar pattern of surrender. Then I remembered Jessica's face during the photo album viewing, the professional mask slipping, the concern, the recognition of something deeply wrong. An outside perspective had finally shown me what I'd been too close to see. I walked out the door. My mother's scream followed me to the car. Not a wail or a sob, but a raw shriek of rage that made neighbors' curtains twitch. I threw the bag in the back seat and fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice. She burst out of the house, still in her nightgown, bare feet slapping against the concrete driveway. She threw herself across the hood of my car, spread eagle like a human shield. Several neighbors had come out onto their porches now, coffee mugs in hand, watching the show. I started the engine. She didn't move. I put the car in reverse and inched backward. She slid off the hood but immediately ran behind the car, planting herself directly in my path. We were at a standstill, me in the driver's seat, her standing behind my car in a silk nightgown at 9 in the morning. The entire neighborhood watching. My phone rang. Jessica. I answered on speaker. She asked if I was okay. I explained the situation. She told me to stay calm, to call the police if necessary, to document everything. My mother heard it all. Her face went through a series of transformations as she processed this new development. Someone was coaching me. Someone was giving me tools to resist her. She moved away from the car and walked calmly back to the house. Too calmly. The neighbors started dispersing. Show apparently over. But I knew better. This wasn't over. This was her regrouping, recalculating, planning her next move. I backed out of the driveway and drove to Jessica's apartment, checking the rearview mirror obsessively. Every car behind me could be my mother following. Every phone call could be her next manipulation. The 10-minute drive felt like hours. Jessica met me at her door and immediately pulled me into a hug. Not a romantic hug, but something protective and grounding. She'd changed out of her professional clothes into jeans and a sweater. Her apartment smelled like coffee and vanilla candles. Normal smells. Safe smells. She made me tea while I sat on her couch, still clutching my duffel bag like a life preserver. She didn't push me to talk, didn't ask questions, just sat nearby with her own mug, creating a bubble of calm in the chaos. My phone had been buzzing non-stop. 23 missed calls. 23 missed calls? That's rookie numbers for a mom who just performed her own one-woman show of How to Lose Your Son in 10 Minutes, complete with knife props and driveway stunts. 47 texts. The messages started pleading, then angry, then pleading again. Photos of med bottles, photos of knives, photos of her crying, a video of her hyperventilating, another video of her calm and composed, explaining how she'd already taken the pills and had about 30 minutes left. Jessica gently took the phone from my hand and turned it face down on the coffee table. She explained about extinction bursts, about how abusers escalate when they feel control slipping away. She used clinical terms that made it feel less personal, less like my mother and more like a textbook case study, but it was personal. It was my mother. The woman who'd raised me, who'd been my only family for 14 years, who twisted that bond into something suffocating and sick. The guilt felt like acid in my stomach. An hour passed, then two. The phone continued buzzing, but less frequently. Jessica suggested I might want to stay somewhere safe for a few days. She offered her couch. I accepted before I could talk myself out of it. That afternoon, she helped me think through next steps. I needed to get important documents from the house, set up my own bank account, figure out a longer-term living situation, normal adult tasks that I'd never been allowed to handle on my own. The plan was to go back the next morning when my mother would be at her weekly hair appointment. I knew her schedule better than my own. Every Tuesday at 10:30, she spent 2 hours at the salon. It would give me a window to grab my birth certificate, social security card, and the rest of my belongings. That night, I barely slept. Jessica had made up the couch with soft blankets and extra pillows, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. What if my mother had canceled her appointment? What if she was waiting for me? What if she'd actually hurt herself this time? The guilt was suffocating. I'd been programmed for 14 years to respond to her distress, to fix things, to sacrifice whatever was necessary to keep her stable. Breaking that programming felt like ripping out my own wiring. Morning came too soon. Jessica offered to come with me, but I knew I had to do this part alone. She gave me her spare key in case I needed to come back quickly. The weight of that key in my pocket felt like armor. I parked down the street from my house and waited until I saw my mother's car leave. Even then, I sat for another 10 minutes, making sure she wasn't circling back. The neighborhood looked different in the morning light. Normal, suburban, nothing to indicate the dysfunction behind our front door. I let myself in with my key, half expecting her to be waiting inside despite seeing her leave. The house was quiet, too quiet. The kitchen had been cleaned, no sign of yesterday's chaos. The knife was gone. The pills had been swept up. Even the scratch marks on the floor had been buffed out. My room was different. She'd been through everything. Drawers emptied and refilled, closet reorganized, my mattress slightly askew like she'd looked under it. On my pillow sat a photo album I'd never seen before. Baby pictures, first day of school, birthday parties, every page designed to weaponize nostalgia. I ignored it and went straight for my documents. They were in her room, in the filing cabinet she'd always kept locked. I'd watched her hide the key enough times to know it was taped under the bottom drawer. My hands shook as I retrieved it. Inside were all my important papers, plus things I didn't expect. Life insurance policies with me as beneficiary, bank accounts in my name that I didn't know existed, investment portfolios, savings bonds. All told, there was over $40,000 I had access to that she'd never mentioned. The front door slammed. My blood froze. She was back. The hair appointment had been a trap, or she'd left early, or she'd never gone at all. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, slow and deliberate. She appeared in the doorway looking nothing like yesterday's chaos. Her hair was perfectly styled, makeup flawless. She wore a conservative dress suit like she was going to a business meeting. The transformation was jarring. She walked to her dresser and began removing her jewelry, acting like I wasn't there, like it was perfectly normal for me to be rifling through her locked filing cabinet. The silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. Finally, she sat on the bed and crossed her legs. She looked at me with clear, calm eyes. No tears, no hysteria, just cold calculation. She started talking about my father, things she'd never told me, how he'd tried to get custody, how he'd fought for visitation rights, how she'd convinced the court he was unstable, unfit, dangerous, how she'd hidden his letters, changed our phone number, moved us twice to keep him away. My father hadn't abandoned us. He'd been erased. She pulled a box from under the bed. Inside were hundreds of letters, birthday cards, Christmas gifts that had been returned to send her. 14 years of attempted contact that I'd never known about. The postmarks showed he'd never stopped trying. The manipulation was masterful. She wasn't begging or threatening anymore. She was showing me the depths of her control, the extent of what she'd done for my own good. She was demonstrating that I'd never really had free will, that every choice I'd thought was mine had been carefully orchestrated. But she'd miscalculated. Instead of breaking me, the revelation freed me. The guilt I'd been carrying wasn't mine to bear. She'd manufactured it, cultivated it, weaponized it, and now, finally, I could see the strings. I gathered my documents and stood to leave. She didn't try to stop me, just watched with those cold, calculating eyes as I walked past her. At the doorway, I turned back. She asked if I was going to contact my father. I told her that was my choice to make. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. Then she did something that chilled me more than any of her hysteria. She smiled, a small, knowing smile that said this wasn't over, that she had more cards to play, that 14 years of control didn't end with one dramatic exit. I left anyway, back to Jessica's apartment with my documents and the box of letters, back to the beginning of figuring out who I was without my mother's voice in my head, back to the terrifying possibility of normal. That evening, Jessica helped me open a bank account online, my own account, with only my name on it. The simple act felt revolutionary. I transferred half the money from the accounts my mother had hidden, leaving the rest to avoid accusations of theft. She texted that night, not threats or manipulation, just a photo of my old bedroom, stripped bare, mattress gone, furniture removed, walls repainted white like I'd never existed there at all. The message was clear. I was being erased, just like my father had been. The next few days blurred together. I called in sick to work, unable to face normal interactions while my world reconstructed itself. Jessica gave me space during the day, checking in periodically but not hovering. At night, we'd talk over dinner about boundaries, about healthy relationships, about the difference between love and control. She never pushed for more than friendship. Even though the attraction was mutual, she understood that I needed to learn who I was before I could be with anyone. Her professional ethics wouldn't allow anything else, and I was grateful for that boundary. My mother's tactics evolved. The hysteria was gone, replaced by something more insidious. She called my workplace and told them I was having a mental health crisis. She contacted my bank claiming identity theft. She reached out to distant relatives with concerns about my sudden personality change. Each move was calculated to isolate me, to make me seem unstable, to create a narrative where she was the concerned mother and I was the troubled son. It might have worked if Jessica hadn't warned me it was coming. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of texts, recordings of voicemails, a timeline of events. Jessica connected me with a lawyer friend who specialized in family law. The consultation was free, the advice invaluable. I learned about restraining orders, cease and desist letters, legal ways to protect myself. But I also learned that courts rarely take emotional abuse seriously. Without physical violence or explicit threats, my options were limited. The lawyer suggested maintaining distance and documenting everything in case escalation occurred. A week into my new life, I finally opened the box of letters from my father. His handwriting was careful, measured. The early letters were angry, desperate, pleading. Over time, they became sadder, more resigned, but never stopped coming. The most recent was from just 3 months ago. He'd hired a private investigator to find our current address. He knew where I worked, where I lived, but had chosen not to make contact directly. He was waiting for me to be ready, to reach out on my own terms. He'd included his phone number, email, address, all the ways to reach him if I ever wanted to. No pressure, no guilt, just an open door. I stared at that phone number for hours. Jessica sat nearby, not offering advice, just being present. The decision had to be mine, another first in my adult life. I sent an email, short, cautious, testing the waters. Within an hour, he'd responded. Also short, also cautious, but warm. We agreed to exchange a few emails before considering a phone call. Baby steps toward a relationship that had been stolen from both of us. My mother must have been monitoring something because she knew immediately. The texts started again, this time with photos of my father from years ago. Police reports she'd filed, restraining orders she'd obtained, all fabricated but official looking enough to plant doubt. She painted him as violent, unstable, dangerous, said she'd protected me all these years, said I was making a terrible mistake. She kept copies of 14 years worth of his letters while telling her son he abandoned them. The way she switched from chaos to that cold, calculated reveal is making my brain spin trying to understand her strategy here. The manipulation was obvious now that I could see it, but it still planted seeds of uncertainty. Jessica helped me research. The police reports were real, but the details didn't add up. The restraining orders had been filed but never granted. The court documents told a different story than my mother's version. A father fighting for his son, a mother systematically destroying his efforts. 2 weeks after leaving, I was starting to build routines. Morning coffee at a shop near Jessica's apartment, job hunting in the afternoons, evening walks to process the day. Small things that felt monumental after years of every moment being monitored. My mother adapted again. She started showing up at the coffee shop, sitting across the room, just watching. She'd follow me on walks, staying half a block behind. She found out where Jessica lived and left flowers on the doorstep with cards addressed to me. No threats, no hysteria, just presence. A constant reminder that she was there, waiting, watching. The security guard at Jessica's building started recognizing her. The coffee shop barista asked if the woman staring at me was okay. My new normal was being stalked by my own mother. Jessica suggested changing routines, varying locations, basic safety measures, but we both knew this was unsustainable. I couldn't hide forever. Eventually, I'd have to confront this directly. The opportunity came sooner than expected. I'd gone back to work, unable to afford more time off. My mother had been calling the office repeatedly, but HR had been informed of the situation and screened her calls. I thought I was safe there. I was wrong. She showed up at my workplace dressed like a client, told reception she had an appointment with me, used a fake name. By the time I realized what was happening, she was already in the conference room I'd been sent to. She looked perfect. Professional blazer, subtle makeup, every inch the concerned mother. She'd brought props, medical files, prescription bottles, a folder thick with what looked like official documents. She spoke calmly about my history of mental health issues, the hospitalizations that never happened, the medications I'd never taken, the sewer slide attempts she'd invented. She'd created an entire alternate history where I was unstable, and she was my devoted caregiver. The meeting was interrupted by security, but the damage was done. My coworkers looked at me differently now. My boss suggested I take more time off to deal with personal issues. The whispers followed me through the halls. I cleaned out my desk that afternoon. Another job lost to her interference. Another piece of my life she'd successfully destroyed. The anger that had been simmering for weeks finally boiled over, but I didn't confront her, didn't scream or rage or give her the reaction she wanted. Instead, I did something she didn't expect. I started rebuilding faster than she could tear down. I found a new job within 3 days. Nothing fancy, just data entry at a small accounting firm downtown. The pay was less, but they didn't ask questions about my sudden availability. My mother discovered where I worked within a week. This time she didn't pretend to be a client. She stood outside the building every morning, holding a sign that read, "My son abandoned me." She wore the same black dress every day, like she was in mourning. Coworkers started asking questions. I kept my head down and entered through the back door. Jessica helped me find a studio apartment across town. The landlord, an older man named Sebastian, didn't require references, just first month's rent and a security deposit. I used some of the money from the hidden accounts. My mother found that address too. She started leaving things on my doorstep, not flowers anymore, baby shoes, my old report cards, a tooth I'd lost when I was 7, preserved in a tiny plastic box. Each item came with a note written in her perfect handwriting, describing the memory attached to it. The manipulation was evolving, becoming more targeted. I changed my phone number. Within hours, she was calling my new job, asking for me. When they wouldn't transfer her, she'd call back pretending to be different people. A doctor with urgent test results, a lawyer with inheritance news, the IRS investigating fraud. The receptionist started screening all my calls. My father and I had progressed to phone conversations. His voice was nothing like I'd imagined. Soft, careful, like he was afraid of scaring me away. He lived 2 states over, had remarried, had 2 daughters, my half-sisters, teenagers who knew about me, who'd grown up knowing they had a brother somewhere their father couldn't reach. During our 3rd call, I heard a click on the line, then breathing, then my mother's voice, small and broken. She'd somehow accessed my work phone remotely. The IT department found spyware on my computer the next day. She'd been monitoring everything, every email, every search, every keystroke. I had to tell my father we couldn't talk anymore. Not yet. Not until I figured out how to cut her access completely. He understood. Said he'd waited 14 years. He could wait longer. The resignation in his voice broke something in me. My mother's tactics shifted again. She stopped the public displays. No more signs, no more doorstep deliveries, no more phone calls. The silence was worse than the harassment. I knew she was planning something. Jessica noticed it too. The calm before the storm, she called it. We varied my routines even more. Different routes to work. Random coffee shops. Never the same grocery store twice. It felt like being hunted by someone who knew me better than I knew myself. Then came the letters to my neighbors. Professional-looking envelopes with typed addresses. Inside, a letter expressing concern about the mentally unstable man who'd just moved into the building. My mother included a photo of me. Lists of fictional warning signs to watch for. A number to call if they noticed erratic behavior. My elderly neighbor across the hall stopped making eye contact. The couple downstairs started double-locking their door when I walked by. Even Sebastian looked at me differently when I paid the next month's rent. I showed him the letter, explained the situation. He listened, then shrugged. Said family drama wasn't his business as long as the rent came on time, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. The seed had been planted. Work became my only refuge, until she found a way to poison that too. She created social media accounts in my name, connected with my coworkers, and started posting disturbing content. Photos of knives, cryptic messages about ending it all, screenshots of fake therapy sessions discussing my violent tendencies. HR called me in. They'd received multiple reports from concerned colleagues. I tried to explain, showed them evidence of my mother's harassment, but the damage was done. They put me on administrative leave pending a full review. We all knew what that meant. Jessica's apartment became my safe house again, but even there, my mother's influence crept in. Jessica started getting calls at her practice, anonymous complaints about professional boundaries, suggestions that she was taking advantage of a vulnerable patient. An ethics review was opened. We both knew my mother was behind it, but proving it was impossible. The complaints were carefully worded, just plausible enough to require investigation. Jessica had to limit our contact to protect her license. Another support system successfully eroded. I started recording everything. Every incident, every sighting, every piece of harassment. The folder grew thick with evidence, but without physical threats or violence. The police said it was a civil matter. The lawyer said we could try for a restraining order, but judges rarely granted them for just emotional manipulation. My money was running low. No job, no prospects, no references I could safely use. My mother had systematically destroyed every avenue of independence I'd tried to build. The $40,000 that had seemed like freedom was disappearing into rent and living expenses. Then she played her masterstroke. I came home to find my apartment door open. Nothing was disturbed, nothing was taken, but on my bed was a single envelope. Inside, photos of Jessica, at her home, at her office, at the grocery store, getting into her car. The message was clear. I can reach anyone you care about. That night, I made a decision. I called Jessica, explained what I needed to do. She protested, said we could fight this together, but we both knew my mother would never stop. Not as long as I gave her something to fight against. The next morning, I did what she'd been pushing me toward all along. I went home. She was waiting in the living room, dressed in the same sundress she'd worn that breakfast months ago. The table was set with the good china, chocolate chip pancakes steaming on a plate, like nothing had happened, like I'd just been away on a trip. She didn't say anything when I walked in, just smiled and gestured to my chair. I sat down, picked up the fork, took a bite. Her smile widened. We fell back into the routine like I'd never left. She didn't mention my absence, didn't gloat about winning, just treated everything as normal. I slept on the couch in her room, gave her foot massages while we watched TV, let her play with my hair while she talked about her day. But something had changed. The guilt was gone. The confusion was gone. I saw everything clearly now. Every touch, every manipulation, every calculated move. I wasn't her prisoner anymore. I was her student. I started documenting differently, not for lawyers or police, but for myself. Learning her patterns, understanding her triggers, mapping the architecture of her control. She thought she'd won, but she'd actually given me the perfect classroom. Jessica texted once to check on me. I told her I was fine, that she should focus on clearing her name. The ethics review would find nothing because there was nothing to find. My mother's accusations would collapse under scrutiny. Jessica would be okay as long as I stayed away. My father emailed asking if I was alright. I wrote back saying I needed more time. He responded with just 2 words that somehow conveyed years of patient understanding. At night, I lay on that familiar couch, listening to my mother's breathing. She slept peacefully now that I was back. No more reaching out in the darkness to check if I was there. She trusted that she'd broken me completely, but I wasn't broken. I was learning. I learned that she grocery shopped every Thursday at exactly 2 p.m. That she had a standing appointment with her therapist every other Wednesday, where she presumably spun stories about her ungrateful son. That she took sleeping pills at exactly 10:30 each night, washing them down with chamomile tea. I learned her passwords by watching her type. Her social media accounts where she portrayed herself as a devoted mother, abandoned by her child. Her email where she coordinated with a network of other mothers who validated her victimhood. Her banking information that showed she'd been slowly draining the accounts in my name. Most importantly, I learned that her greatest weakness was her certainty that she'd won. 3 months passed in this strange stasis. To outsiders, we looked like a devoted mother and son. She'd post photos of our happy life on social media, tag me in posts about how grateful she was to have her baby back. The comments were full of sympathy for for what she'd been through during our rough patch. But every night I refined my plan, not for revenge or justice, just for freedom. Real freedom this time, the kind that couldn't be